I don't have any distinct recollections. The earliest thing, I was put into school in Tirupati at the age of 5, and I put in 4 years there until I came to the first form. As things go, I was a good student. I was at my parents' then, so there's nothing spectacular. So.
राष्ट्र सल्यूट देंगे राष्ट्र सल्यूट बधाई देख आगे कदम कदम आगे चल
I, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, do swear in the name of God that I will faithfully execute the office of President of India and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect and defend the Constitution and the law.
Tiruthanni, 40 miles northwest of Madras. Here in 1888, the second child of a deeply religious couple, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, was born. Those were quiet, peaceful times, and the pursuit of knowledge, for those who had the background, was a commitment. After his early education, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan moved over to another of India's holy places.
The next 4 years at Tirupati, I was away by myself. It is from 9 to 12. I was in a small hotel. And I was not a very diligent or regular student then, because I was left to myself. So I used my attendance at school was very irregular.
From Tirupati to Voorhees College, Vellore. Here, for the first time, he revealed the true bent of his mind, acquisition of knowledge, work towards wisdom.
When I passed my, what was then called the first arts examination, answering to our intermediate, it was open to me to have taken up mathematics or history for my BA degree. But the accident of my getting a few books on philosophy from a cousin of mine who just passed the BA degree examination made me select philosophy. Not that I had any predilection for it or any eagerness to solve the problems of the world, but it was an accident of my getting the books free that decided my career as a student of philosophy.
It was a happy accident, and its consummation lay in the future, in worldwide recognition as a philosopher, as a sane, resonant voice in a world of strife and turmoil. And finally, as the president of the 480 million people of India. But all this in the future. from Tirutani to Tirupati to Vellore, and then on to Madras.
With a scholarship tenable in the Madras Christian College, I left Vellore for Madras. I was there for 4 years in the Madras Christian College. Took both my BA and MA degree examinations from there. The way in which Indian philosophy was criticized by the teachers at Madras in those years led me to take an interest in Indian thought and find out what is alive and what is not alive in Indian thought, how much it has changed and how much it should change for the betterment of our own culture. I tried to make a clear study of Indian thought and find out whether the criticisms are justified or not, what is wrong with it and what it has to shed off, and what is right with it and what has to be preserved.
And from that wellspring flowed a series of contributions to college magazines. An outstanding performance as a student and high commendation from the university.
The very year I passed my MA degree examination, I took up service as a lecturer in the Madras Presidency College. I started teaching there from the 1st of April, 1909. I was sent to the Teachers Training College, Hyderabad in 1910, from January to December. The lecturer in psychology happened to be on leave, and I was called upon, though a student, to also teach psychology to the LT students. So I was both a student and a teacher for that year.
Student and teacher, he has been throughout his life, a key to the awareness and achievement of Professor Radhakrishnan. He returned to Madras Presidency College in 1911 and continued there till 1916, when he became the head of the Department of Philosophy. Always the inquiring spirit, to go back to the very roots of Indian life and thought.
The great point about Indian thought was that it was subject to renewal in every stage. We had Indian thought in the Vedas as one thing, the Upanishads is quite different. You come to the Buddhist and Gita works, different altogether. Then you come to the commentators, Shankara, Ramananda, etc., quite different. Then when you had a number of saint singers like Kabir, Ramananda, etc., who were trying to help us to find out the common background of all these religions, what is said to be unity in diversity. Different cultures, different peoples, different religions are getting together. And Indian thought essentially emphasized what you call the saintliness of man.
The world his home, the universe of thought his special province. A series of articles turned the searchlight on philosophies and philosophers. The Madras phase was coming to a close. Professor A.R. Wadia, a contemporary, speaks of that time.
In July 1918, Professor Radhakrishnan was appointed, my colleague, as Professor of Philosophy. And it was a very great acquisition to the Philosophy Department of Mysore University. Professor Radhakrishnan was not merely a distinguished writer on philosophy, but he was a great teacher as well.
I got on well with the students. I never had any trouble with them. They come to me very often, both from outside and from the country. They write to me even now. So that our relations have been quite friendly and cordial.
Mysore led to Calcutta and to a renowned chair, the George V Professorship in Philosophy.
But Gandhiji was successful in South Africa.
Now Professor Radhakrishnan published his massive 2-volume Indian Philosophy. Acutely aware of his country's predicament, he wrote, "Political subjection which interferes with this inner freedom is felt as a gross humiliation. The cry for Swaraj is the outer expression of the anxiety to preserve the provinces of the soul." Years later, as the president of his country, he was to visit Great Britain, which once ruled over India. No stranger to England or its great seats of learning, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan was engaged in the immense task of East-West reconciliation from as far back as the 1920s. Manchester College at Oxford invited him in 1926 to deliver the Upton Lectures on the Hindu view of life.
Their theology course included a compulsory study of non-Christian traditions of thought. Everyone has to know something about the other traditions, other systems than their own, to make people believe that there is something valuable in every system of thought, and we should adopt it if we are to feel ourselves to be citizens of the new world.
The Upton Lectures led to the publication of a book. The Hibbert Lectures at London and Manchester resulted in an idealist view of life. From the Spalding Professorship at Oxford came Eastern religions and Western thought. Clearly the philosopher from India was at home here in these quadrangles of learning. He spoke in All Souls College. He spoke in the classrooms and from the pulpits, eloquent interpreter of eternal truths and contemporary dilemmas.
Whereas they were unwilling to go to scientific laboratories and see where they get a dogmatic denial, unwilling equally to go to Orthodox churches, etc., where you had complete affirmation. They thought here was something which is neither complete affirmation nor complete denial, something which takes into account the progress of thought and makes us reckon with the new developments in science, technology, and culture.
All Souls College honored Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan with its highest recognition. He was a member of the International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation of the League of Nations. Vice-Chancellor of Andhra University in 1931. At the invitation of Rabindranath Tagore, lectured at Shantiniketan. At Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's request, he moved on to Banaras Hindu University. It was during his vice-chancellorship that the university went through a period of progress and expansion. Around this time, the freedom movement was reaching its peak.
All the great days which we had, political excitement in 1942, I happened to be there. But the great thing was that I knew the most representative figures of our age, Gandhi, Tagore, Nehru. I had very close contacts with them, took their counsel as men representing a senior generation.
On Mahatma Gandhi's 70th birthday, he edited a volume of tributes and appreciations. Inevitably, as India marched towards independence, history took Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan closer to the center of events. As a member of the Constituent Assembly, he heard Jawaharlal Nehru move the Independence Pledge.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Dr. Radhakrishnan seconded the motion in a moving oration.
History and legend will go round this day. It marks a milestone in our democracy's march. Here in this land, under the leadership of one who will go down in history as perhaps the greatest man of our age, we have opposed patience to fury, quietness of spirit to bureaucratic tyranny. With what result? That the transition is being effected in such an orderly and dignified way.
Independence brought in a host of responsibilities. Chairman of the Indian Universities Commission, ambassador to the Soviet Union, a crucial assignment at a critical time. President of the General Conference of UNESCO, meeting the great challenge of raising the awareness of man. And in 1952, Vice President of the Indian Union. The philosopher came home to be the statesman. A busy, many-sided life. Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, the second chamber of the Indian Parliament. Throughout a distinguished two-term vice presidency, his was a leading role in all aspects of national activity. No area of life outside his concern. Sometimes the high office. Now and then his own capacity to relax in the lighter events. Always ready to raise resources for a good cause. Respected throughout the country, a respect based on affection, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan has always been at home, both with the great and the humble. His vice presidency took him to many countries and friendly people, not merely as the representative symbol of his nation, but as one of those universal men from whom the world draws the guidelines of a good life. Wherever he went, he spoke as a friend and philosopher of freedom and peace and well-being.
I have no doubt that the African peoples will very soon attain self-government. If that doesn't happen, it will be a terrific loss, both to the authorities and to the African people. My hope And my prayer is that these things be settled, not through violent upheavals, but by peaceful constitutional processes.
Out in West Germany, an international peace prize was given to him, setting the seal on a voyage of friendship. Back home, the nation's highest honor, the Bharat Ratna. And the 1960s got underway. The beginnings of the development decade witnessed a new bid for takeoff by India. In Algeria, years of strife ended in a peaceful settlement. Kenya was moving towards independence. Man burst through into space in search of a millennial dream. In India in 1962, history's biggest general elections got underway, the third since independence. In New Delhi, a new government headed by Jawaharlal Nehru was sworn in. And a new president, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, professor, philosopher, servant of the people.
May I say in all humility that I shall endeavor to do my best to deserve in some modest measure the great faith of my people and devote the few years left to me to their service.
Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, President of the Indian Union, vested with executive powers to carry out the will of the people of India. A look inside Rashtrapati Bhavan on any morning reveals the simplicity of the man and his single-minded application to duty and service. A host of things to attend to, many appointments waiting for presidential sanction, acts of government to be approved. As President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan receives distinguished visitors. No mere formality, but an essential part of fostering India's good relations with other nations. And, in search of peace and friendship, he sets out to visit many parts of the world.
Peace is in the hearts of all men of goodwill. We need peace within and without to solve our problems. If the values of civilization are to endure, we must come to terms with our close neighbors and work for world fellowship. If deep uneasiness disturbs us when we look out on the world, it only shows that a great change must come. We are trembling on its verge. Whether it is a leap forward to unmeasured prosperity or a plunge backward to barbarism depends on us, on what we make of the spectacular achievements of science and technology. We have enough material explosives which can put an end to life on Earth. Let us work for just and peaceful settlements wherever possible, and non-proliferation of nuclear weapons as an essential preliminary for complete disarmament.
something more than a temporal head, something more than even a representative of his people, always a world citizen, whether in Asia or Africa, the USA or the USSR, promoting peace, narrowing down differences on behalf of life and the future. From hemisphere to hemisphere, placing the point of view of developing countries and the international situation as his country sees it.
The President is a noted philosopher. When I commented on the weather this morning, he said we cannot always control events, but we can always control our attitude towards events. This is only the beginning, I'm sure, Mr. President, of a good deal of wisdom which we will derive from your visit, so that I know that I speak on behalf of all of my countrymen in welcoming the distinguished President of a great country to the shores of the United States. Mr. President.
Mr. President, I thank you for your very kind words, and I am glad to be here accepting your invitation. It gives me an opportunity to meet you, Mrs. Kennedy, the leaders of your government and your people. We greet in you, Mr. President, an understanding and sympathetic friend, aware of the efforts we are making to build a liberal democracy in our country at a time when in many parts of the world the fabric of democracy is crumbling down. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your kind speech.
A philosopher's journey, the Americans hailed a wise and Catholic mind, calling all the world to match its tremendous scientific advances with a reawakening of the spirit. The great question of our time, the overriding issue of survival. Speaking to the United Nations, President Radhakrishnan said,
The highest concept is world community. It is that kind of world community to which we have to attach ourselves. It is unfortunate that we are still the victims of concepts which are outmoded, which are outdated, so to say. We are living in a new world, and in a new world, new type of men is necessary. And unless we are able to change our minds, to change our hearts, it will not be possible for us to survive in this world. The challenge that is open to us is it survival or annihilation?
Back home, the cares of high office. The wide-ranging presidential duties include the opening of Parliament. He delivers the presidential address outlining policies and plans for the present and the future.
I, Indira Gandhi,
Do solemnly affirm
The leader of the majority party in Parliament is invited to form a government.
and allegiance
to the Constitution of India
to the Constitution of India
as by law established,
as by law established,
that I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India,
that I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India
Prime Minister for the Union,
as the Prime Minister for the Union.
On the advice of the Prime Minister, the President appoints a Council of Ministers.
I do solemnly affirm that I will not directly or indirectly communicate or reveal as a Minister for the Union
On several occasions, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan is at home.
Your baby getting on well? Thank you very much, sir. Why, here or there?
At home, sir.
At home?
Yes.
Why, in Bombay or here?
Yes, sir. Delhi.
Delhi. Indeed. I saw Mr. Musa. I know. I saw Mr. Musa. I saw him, I remember. September 1st, order of the day.
It's a good idea to sit down.
Yeah, after some time we have to sit down.
I pay my homage to your Lord.
Thank you.
And Shri Srimati Indira Gandhi.
Indira Gandhi is there.
As President, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan is the Supreme Commander of India's armed forces, encouraging men and officers, defining their role in a free democracy.
Our troops have so far only fought for peace and for the defense of our land. We are proud of our soldiers, our airmen, our naval ratings, their achievements and their valor. But above all, we are proud of their nobility, which is a great part of the gift of life. And let us remember their readiness to sacrifice even the most precious gift of life and adopt an attitude of courage and self-denial.
Fountainhead of recognition for outstanding services, the President confers on the late Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, the Bharat Ratna, here received by his son. For valor, for service, for outstanding achievement in diverse fields of life, honoring those contributing to the making of a rich civilization. Oftener than the many calls on his time and energy permit, President Radhakrishnan tours the country, symbol of its unity. Knitting the many people of a large country together in the realization of a common destiny. In times of hope, as well as of affliction, his is the healing voice. Not without reason is he known as our President. From land's end to land's end, enjoining upon his people the high ideal of tolerance of a secular but spiritual India.
We call ourselves a secular state. That does not mean that we don't profess any religion or that we are indifferent to religion. It only means that we don't identify the state with any particular religion, and we respect all religions and give them full freedom to express themselves and grow. Intolerance, hatred, oppression of religious minorities, these things are not in our proper tradition.
Only when philosophers are kings, or the kings and princes of this world have the spirit and power of philosophy, and political greatness and wisdom meet in one, then only will this our state behold the light of day. So said Plato over 2,000 years ago. In Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, philosopher, president, India has that rare confluence.
My whole attempt in my pretty long life, in my writings, speeches and works, was to promote the unity of the world on the basis of mind and spirit. That is what we attempted to do when we were confronted by different cultures and others in our country, with the Aryan and the Dravidian, the Hindu and the Buddhist, the Jew and the Christian, the Zoroastrian and the Muslim. All these things came to India. And our one attempt was to bring about the essential unity underlying all these religions. and thus contributing to what you call world solidarity. And that's what the world is called upon to do today.
Parliament House, New Delhi, 13th of May 1967. Continuing the tradition of intellectual leadership, Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan handed over the reins of office of the President of India to Dr. Zakir Hussain. From philosopher to scholar, the outgoing president was given a warm and affectionate send-off. After serving the country with great distinction as ambassador, as vice president and president of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan returned to a life of quiet reflection at his home in Madras. In 1975, the former president of India suffered a long illness. On the 17th of April 1975, he succumbed to cardiac failure. A great intellectual and scholar, teacher and academician, philosopher and statesman, a man of humble birth who rose to the highest office in the land, passed into history, mourned by multitudes of his countrymen.